I think we'll kick off. We've got people joining now, so we'll have some more coming in, no doubt. So, really warm welcome to everyone. It's great to see you all here this evening for our May environment session. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, recognising their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So we've got a great session this evening. So in a moment, we'll hear from Kirsten Jr., who's the CEO at Reverse Garbage Cooperative. Then we thought Carolyn and I've got a few questions that we'll ask her, and then we'll throw it open to everyone. And then for those of you that would like to sort of stay around after, we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about the recent, obviously last week's federal election, get your thoughts on what it means going forward for the climate and the environment, and how we can obviously keep the momentum going. So introducing Kirsten. Kirsten is the CEO of Reverse Garbage Cooperative. Reverse Garbage is Australia's largest creative reuse centre. Every year they save over 260 tonnes of valuable resources from languishing in landfill and educate over 16,000 people on the importance of reuse. And this year, Reverse Garbage is celebrating its 50th anniversary, which is a huge achievement. Kirsten has been with Reverse Garbage for the past 10 years and has been CEO for the past 3.5 years. Prior to this, she worked with Dress for Success Sydney, and also she has an associate diploma from NIDA in theatre crafts, which includes costume making. So I can see some costumes there behind you as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Kirsten, and over to you.
Thank you, Steve and Carolyn, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm talking to you from Gadigal lands in Sydney, and I live just up the road from Reverse Garbage. So Reverse Garbage is located on Gadigal Wongal land down on the Cooks River here in Sydney's inner west. So yes, turning 50, but I usually start these sort of talks with, I know there's a few blank screens, but who's heard of Reverse Garbage before? And yay, that's what we like. So as Steve said, yes, we do turn 50 this year, and as a fully self-funded not-for-profit business, we are really proud of that achievement. So this evening, I'm just going to go through a bit of our history, our environmental, social, and economic impact, and the way things have sort of changed over the last 50 years is about how we describe ourselves, the change of language. There's a lot of terminology that wasn't even around or being used when we were started 50 years ago, especially in terms of environment. Sustainability is that catch-all word now that really didn't exist as far as Reverse Garbage was concerned those 50 years ago. So I will show you our first slide, and thank you to my technical department here. The joys of being in retail means that unlike most of you on these Zooms, I've hardly done, I've hardly done any Zooms over the past 5 or 6 years. So when I was asked to do this, it was like, oh, I will need help. So I'm watching. So there we go. Our trucks over the years. So that first photo you can see in the middle there really is Reverse Garbage's first truck. And Reverse Garbage was started by a group of teachers and community members. Marrickville back then was very, very different. There was a lot more manufacturing and light industry in and around Marrickville. And they started using these resources within their classrooms and then thought, this is bigger and better than this. So, and those resources really spoke in a couple of ways to them why they wanted to use them in their classrooms. They were open-ended, imaginative, non-prescriptive, and they were cheap. So, and then it became clearer that they were reusing materials, and it's something that Reverse Garbage has always spoken about for 50 years. It's been creative reuse, not recycling. So yeah, they started collecting these materials in that truck and picking them up and using them in their classrooms. And then eventually in 1975, they got the old drill hall at Addison Road Community Centre. And that's where we were for 47 years till we moved down to Carrington Road. But more about that later. And I do tend to jump around, so keep up. So and although our trucks may have changed, the core, the essence of reverse garbage really hasn't changed. It is that mission to educate through reuse and collecting those materials and keeping them out of landfill for as long as possible. I will just say here that we don't kid ourselves, that that the materials that we collect don't eventually end up in landfill. But what we do and what makes reverse garbage special is that we provide them and use them in our education programs to teach about reuse and the opportunities of looking at things in a completely different way, and therefore educating through that opportunity to find these weird and wonderful materials that then leads to the education and advocacy for reuse. So, bit more about me. So I do celebrate my 10th year at Reverse Garbage on in 3 days. And so early on in my career, but I always say I've been shopping there since I was about 10. My mum used to bring me there. I conveniently, Reverse Garbage was just down the road from my kids' school. So if I was early to the pickup, I could duck into Reverse Garbage, see what they've got, and then go and pick them up. It was perfect placement. So early on at Reverse, I was sent to an Inner West Environmental Leaders Forum, and we were asked to reflect on how we'd got to where we were and what we were doing. And as I started thinking about, dress for success, it was using clothes that had been donated and reused for women to find jobs for interviews. Prior to that, I had a business with a business partner. We were screen printing fabric, and we'd reuse end rolls rather than going to a wholesaler and buying new. Prior to that, it was film and television, and that was always doing things on a budget and turning a 1970s suit into a 1940s suit. So it wasn't till it was something that I have always done. I didn't really even think about it, that I had been doing it, till I actually got to Reverse Garbage. And I'm very fortunate, I think, that I have been able to work there for 10 years and be part of this unique Sydney institution. So I've got a few props that I'll be showing as well. But and we're doing questions at the end, or can people pop in at any time? I'm happy for that as well, if we've got the... Yep.
Yeah, we can do either. I think carry on for now, and if anyone's got a question, they can jump in or add it to the chat. But no, please.
Very good.
Carry on.
So our environmental impact, and one of the first questions I always get asked is, what do you take? And I think the better angle is, what don't we take? And there's not a lot. So there's a couple of things that we will always say no to, and that's flat packed furniture, because it's MDF and chipboard. And yeah, that's about it. So it's very hard to describe Reverse Garbage, except that we take zippers, Hessian sacks, caster wheels, fabric offcuts, leather offcuts, ends of lines. So, if I always say, if we don't have it, you don't need it. There's another bumper sticker we found from 1996 that they'd made, and it says, I don't know what it is, but I got it at Reverse Garbage. So I think the joy of Reverse is the weirdness and the wonderfulness and all the stories that go with it. So we are open 7 days, and we do accept, 4 to 5 tonne a month. And I know that more sometimes, and I know that we are able to move that on, because if it didn't move, we wouldn't be able to walk into our warehouse. So it does move, and our customers base is as wide and as varied as our donations. So we aren't a typical shop selling X to X. We are sort of selling A to Z from to Z to A, and I think that's what makes reverse garbage really special, is our diversity in donations as well as our customer base. So I think our environmental impact. I was going to mention that, I think, these words that I was talking about, sustainability, reuse, and now the circular economy that's being spoken more and more about every day. I get quite frustrated when I see on LinkedIn or at conferences that Standard Circle, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation graph that talks about, circularity and the potential, and it is huge. But I think as a community grassroots organizations, that now that we've heard about the circular economy, we've actually been doing this for 50 years, and we have not only the environmental but that social impact that is really going to complete the 360, and as with repair as well. And another aspect of what reverse garbage is trying to do is teach about the potential of things. So we have a monthly mending and repair session that's held down at our workshops each week, and the handing on of skills is crucial to that repair element of the circular economy. And, lots of people, and we've heard, talk about the circular economy, it's going to fix everything, we're going to get there by 2030. If we're not teaching these skills in school, we're not going to be able to get to the full 360. So education is crucial, not only advocating for sustainability, reuse, and environmental issues, but also teaching those skills that can be handed, that we need to quickly garner from older generations and pass them on to younger generations. So as I'm talking, reverse garbage does a lot of things. It is really a hard place to describe. So I hope I'm sort of, creating a picture for you. One of the things I've been really keen to do in my role as CEO is really advocate for reuse as more than just a place where you go to get the lovely cheap craft materials. We can probably move the trucks. Can I go back to so really or just me, because I've got some props now.
Oh, back. Okay.
So really advocate that reverse garbage is more than just a place where you go to get, things for your kids' diorama or hat book week or hat parades. And as part of that, we have been involved in quite a few campaigns, quite significant campaigns that reverse garbage just by ourselves as one little place in a West Marrickville wouldn't have been able to do. So last year, we're members of Charitable Reuse Australia, which used to be the Zero Waste Network. Zero Waste Network joined Charitable Reuse Australia. And Charitable Reuse Australia with New South Wales EPA set up a co-design team that reverse garbage was a member of to advocate for reuse and policy change around that. One of the frustrating things for me and reverse garbage is that there's a lot of grant funding out there that only talks about new initiatives or new startups, or and they're always talking about recycling, not about reuse, and there's such a huge difference. So part of the thing that I've been really advocating for, everyone's talking about tax breaks and we can do this and we can do that. The first thing we need to do is get the language right. All right, not only the media, but in the policies and the general public. So that's something that I've been very mindful about doing over the last 3 years. So, and last year that data impact study was launched down at Reverse Garbage. So, there was a very proud moment for me and Reverse Garbage that we were part of such an important study that is still being looked at and will hopefully inform policy decisions and some language changes for New South Wales. They've just done the same thing down in Tasmania with the Tasmanian government, and on the success of that, it is spreading to other states. So it's that's a big win, I think, for reverse garbage and that language change that I keep harping on about. Right, what else? Oh, look, I was going to props. So we're always asked about what we get. So these are two of their cardboard cones that used to have knitting wool or embroidery yarns on them. And they're some of we've always had them as long as I can remember, and they're some of my favourite donations just because they're cardboard and not plastic. So it's amazing how much more plastic we, in the past 10 years that it's interesting. There's trends in rubbish and manufacturing as to what we get, but I do love these. And they're getting harder to find because there's less manufacturing in Sydney and Australia at the moment. But these are interesting. These are what we call our alien brains. I don't know how well they're translating on, a Zoom to lots of different people, but well, there we go. So imagine if you leave your hot glue gun on and it dribbles out and pools. So these come from a plastic manufacturer. And they're called, what are they called? Anyway, they push all the last bit of plastic out and they dribble and set. And when I go out to manufacturers, I want to see what they're throwing out, not what they're making. And I was chatting to the guy who was the manager, and he started out on the workshop floor, and he used to get to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and in winter, way back then, it used to be cold. Not so much anymore. Have we had a cold day yet? No. And he used to pick them up and put them in his back pockets, and they'd keep him warm because they were really hot and they'd retain the heat till the morning for him. So we get these by the ton, and the science fiction model makers love them. Kids love them because they're really textural, they're awesome. And then and there's not a National Art School art exhibition end of year that I don't see at least one of these in. Another thing that at the beginning of COVID, hello Julia, we got a call from an emergency doctor. I got an email from an emergency doctor who they had no PPE, they had no face shields, and he said, surely, he knew Reverse Garbage, he lived locally, and he said, surely you can make something out of the stuff that you've got in there. And I went, we probably can, and we did. So I found, and now really, I'm good at this. This is clear, but it's assets like the front covers that you'd get on a presentation folder. I had a stack of those. We had heaps. We get lots of foam offcuts. We get lots of double-sided tape, and we had ribbon from Games 2000. So we stuck it all together, and we had face shields. And I did that was in an hour, sent it back, and I said, would this work? And he said yes. And we then got volunteers to come and make them. We'd put the packs together, give them out, they'd bring them back a couple of days later, and we were able to make about 2,000 face shields from materials that would have otherwise gone to landfill. They weren't sterile, I know that. We wouldn't have done any brain surgery with them, but it got us through, it got people through, and it just shows you the value of resources. And I think I sometimes think that garbage in our title is not the best word, so I now shorten it down to reverse, or even shorter down to RG, but it just shows you the value of materials and that everything is actually a resource, not waste. What else have I got here? Interesting donations. Oh, we get offcuts of timber in weird and wonderful shapes. oh, look, half this room is probably full of reverse garbage. In fact, here's an issue. So when I first started at Reverse Garbage, everyone looked at me and said, have you told Steve you are going to end up on one of those hoarder shows? Because I do like fabric, I do like stuff, and I love the stories of things. And it's actually had the reverse effect on me, ironically, because now I see so much stuff, so much coming in to just one small place in Marrickville. It actually has to be really good for me to even consider bringing it home now, unless they're scissors. Scissors always come home. So what else have we done? Oh, then talking about our face shields, I don't know if any of you have seen, just a fortnight ago, City of Sydney released their Resilient Sydney strategy for 25 to 30. Carolyn and Steve, there's a couple of links. I can send the data impact study for the EPA, CRA, and also the Resilient Sydney link to share with you all if you'd like it. But it was a great, I didn't realise how many councils there are in Sydney. There's 33 different council areas in Sydney. And, you know, all these climate changes and climate shocks, as they are calling them in this strategy, don't know borders. They will cross rivers and roads. So it was a really great event to be at, to see how you know, the environment and the strategy working towards making Sydney more resilient, what they're all thinking. And proudly on page 98 is a case study. Our face shield project was, you know, full page. So that was awesome. Okay, so that's a little bit of our environmental impact. I just want to, because I'm now looking at the clock going, oops. We have a huge social impact at Reverse Garbage that I don't think a lot of people actually know about. And for over 20 years, and again, that is across a variety of things that we do. For over 20 years, we've worked with the Department of Community and Justice, offering a safe, non-judgmental space for people to do community service orders. So we have them, they come and volunteer with us so that they can work through their orders before, and you know, they're still working, but they come and volunteer with us. We also work with Department of what's it called? The Department of State Revenue. And we have people who are they've proven economic hardship to come and again do fines at a certain hour, come and volunteer with us to help pay off their fines at a certain hourly rate. And just in the last year or 8 months with that program, we've helped people pay off over $8,000 worth of fines. So, you know, we have a huge social impact as well. It's in this cost, you know, it's budgetary, it's our those two programs, it's our work for 50 years with Mardi Gras. There's not a float that doesn't go by that doesn't have a little bit of reverse garbage in it somewhere. We were lucky enough to walk up Oxford Street this year. And yeah, I don't know if you saw us. We walked onto Oxford Street at 10:26, and then we won Best Community Costumes this year, which was a huge feat, and we're very proud of that, because we are again a real diverse, inclusive space, and I think that's another reason why Reverse Garbage has just been so successful over the last 50 years. We employ 12 full-time equivalents, and then have some casuals that work with us, especially in our education. I've hardly even spoken about our education program. All right, I'm going to do that now. We go out to schools, and schools come to us. Our programs, we don't buy anything to use within them. If we rely on donations and our creativity for materials, we don't use tape or glue in our classes. So kids are encouraged to think creatively and look at materials differently, to work out how they're going to create those connections. And it's awesome. You go into a workshop and it's all noisy and they can't work it out. I need this and that. And then it goes quiet and they've got it and they're working on their programs, and then the results are awesome. We also get kids to take their projects apart at the end and split it up to, you don't need to go home with something, so that, and then they work out where that's going so that it can be reused again for more classes for the next kids. One of our programs that's hugely successful is Loose Parts Play. I'll send you the Catalyst link for that. And that's all about using open-ended resources, non-prescriptive resources that are big or small or heavy, and it encourages team building, and kids and adults get lost in this for hours. There's a bit of a resurgence around this. It is that sort of thing of, the box is better than the present, but reverse garbage you can kind of create these spaces, but because of the unique resources that we get, we are the best place to come shopping for Loose Parts Play, because you're not going to get these in a modern teaching aids catalogue or at the toy store. So that's a good way of describing us. We're just the best toy store ever. Education. So yes, and so a lot of the teachers that founded Reverse Garbage, that was the sort of thing that they were doing in their classrooms, and it has been something that we have continued for the 50 years. Slightly different resources, but the theory is exactly the same. We teach from early childhood through to year 12, and then we also have a range of public programs on the weekends where we work with local artists and they have to be relevant. We have a beautiful kintsugi, which is the Japanese repair method, workshops and lino printing and indigo dyeing, but all with a reuse element. Ways to help reverse garbage. We love volunteers. You can donate goods. If you're not donating to us, think about things at end of life where they can go. Being wonderful and awesome and green is a bit harder, we all know that, but if we can find, I'm always happy to have emails sent to me saying, I've got this, what can I do with it? That's another thing. If we can't accept it, we are capacity driven. We always like to work with other local wonderful sustainability or other groups. For instance, I don't know if you know about Circle Paints up in St. Peter's, a new social enterprise, circular economy. They accept house paint and sell then for 50% cheaper than Dulux, and they retint it, sell it to mural artists, home DIYs. So I love that there are smaller groups coming forth that are making these, choosing to do something that is quite hard but has such a valuable impact. Another wonderful partnership we have is with the Social Outfit. I don't know if anyone's heard of them, a beautiful social enterprise up on King Street, but their warehouse is in Marrickville. And we pay their sewing room with donated fabrics to make bags that is used in our filler bag section. And we've co-branded them. So that's another lovely partnership that we've been able to develop locally. And then we were able to receive some grant funding to employ one of their retail graduates this year for a year, 1 day a week while they're studying at TAFE. She's arrived in Australia. She's only been here for a year and a half. She's graduated from that program, and we've been able to help her for the next year have some employment. And then hopefully we'll be able to do that again for another graduate next year. So I think that I've tried to sum up reverse garbage in 25 minutes. I'm always there 5 days a week if anyone wants to pop in and have the in-life tour. Yeah, over to you. Are there
Thank you
any
so
questions,
much.
or do you want more? Or
There's a couple of questions. We've got a couple of questions, and there's some in the chat already, which we'll go through in a minute.
Yep.
But I was also going to just let you know that there's some people on the call who are quite involved in different ways in, I suppose, reusing resources, and some of them are commercial. I don't want to put anybody on the spot if they don't feel like
Whoops, what have I said?
volunteering, but I know there's 360 .org. Have I got that? I think I've got that right. And
Oh, Good 360, yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Good 360, and also Corbin and Blair. So
Down the road in Lewisham.
some wonderful people who are aligned. I might just go through the questions that we've got through the chat first, and then Stephen and I have got some other ones. So Stu's asked, you mentioned that RG do a lot of work in the community and with local schools to raise awareness and advocate for reuse and recycling. It would be great to understand the school program and perhaps some examples of key messages.
Sure. We always start off each class with what is this? Where do you think it came from? And how can we dispose of it sustainably and ethically at the end? So some of the programs that we do are, there's one called Sustainable Packaging. So they get together in groups, is very much a design. Think about what you're going to do first. We don't leap into the activity. So we want you to sit down, think about the name of your business. This is the product and you've got to get it from A to B. So it might be a bunch of grapes. It might be a precious sculpture, and they all get a variety of materials, and they have to work out how they can. And we go through a few examples of, the bananas that are over packaged, and, so they have to really think about the materiality of that thing. Does it need packing? Does it need a lot of packing? Does it need refrigeration? And how that they can then put together something that's not over packaged. So, and then we aim that to the different age groups. So if it's a year 10 design and technology, it's a lot more structured. And if it's, year 4, it's variations on a theme aimed at the age group. Another one that's very popular is our sustainable cities. So kids are given a big, they're kind of let loose. They've got to plan what they want. We go through, again, the materiality, and they build their sustainable city, and it is awesome. It's everything from water saving to the solar panels, but they're making their beautiful theatre, what are those things called? Home theatres work, and their Taylor Swift's rooms work, and all this. But again, they're thinking about how they can design that sustainably. And does that sort of answer?
That's great. Next question is totally different. Matt's asked, where does your funding come from and how much is from the sale of products?
The majority of it. Our retail side very much subsidises the education and the rent and the wages. We have just in the last year started, we've got a grant writer working for us on a monthly retainer, and we're seeing a bit of success with that. But the big goal is some untethered funding that, I don't need to, fill out the grants and acquit. So if I like to think that if I could just show you my annual report each year, that's my acquittal. I know what we do is awesome. I know what everyone's done before me is awesome. But yeah, we're very much self-funded.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kirsten. We've got one here from Virginia. She says, is RG affiliated with or do you collaborate with any groups from other states? For example, Reverse Art Truck in Melbourne.
So Reverse Art Truck, we don't. We are friends, definitely. And there's a reverse garbage in Queensland that is very similar to us, but they run at a slightly different cooperative model to us. I often, look, if it wasn't for the tyranny of distance and the cost of transport, I would love to start up some sort of sharing scheme because, you know, we get offered a lot of materials and sometimes I have to say no. And if I could take it and then send it for reuse in Brisbane or Melbourne, that would be the dream. But so yeah, yes, same theory, but not same companies.
Yeah, great. And also,
there's enough stuff to go around.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, I would like to go out of business.
And it looks like we'll link you up with Liz here because she would like to connect with you going forward as well in terms of the work she's doing. So, Liz, do you want to just jump on and talk about that? Because that's quite interesting too.
Oh, okay. I don't want to hijack. Hi, Kirsten. Congratulations on all your work. There's a group of mothers who got talking around soccer fields about 3 years ago, and we noticed that there was a lot of rubbish. We also noticed with our own kids how much gear we had at the end of every year, and we didn't know what to do with it. So we came up with this idea for the Sustainable Sports Program, and we applied to Fed Government, and they gave us a grant, and we started the program. And I think last year we took quite a few 100 tons of soccer gear and boots and things that kids have only worn once.
Yep.
And we're distributing them to rural areas and to the Indigenous health and mental wellness programs. But we actually have more gear now than we can manage. So I was thinking that we could talk a bit later and see what we could do.
Yep, happy to.
Yeah, that's great, Liz. Thanks so much. And
so
Kirsten,
much.
I mean, obviously 50 years is a major milestone, so congratulations. And looking forward over the next 5 to 10 years, what are your aspirations for the organization?
Well, I want to invite you all to our party on the 20th September. I said this year it was getting over Mardi Gras, then we're getting over the party, but we are planning. We can't stay where we currently are. We've just signed, so it was 3 years this January that we reopened down in Carrington Road, our new home, and we've got another 2 3/4 years to go. So I am genuinely talking to councils and other about a new space. I'm paying commercial rent and I can't keep doing that. That is just not a sustainable way to run a business that sells a lot to 50-cent things. So I bet it was our only choice at the 11th hour. Something else fell through when we did move there a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now. Time flies. So I think very much my driver for the next few years is finding a secure home for reverse garbage and handing it over. Bit of succession planning.
Good luck.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I was really interested when you said before that you visit a lot of manufacturing facilities, and I think you've also made a comment about manufacturing, you know, over the last 10 years, the changes you've seen in manufacturing.
Yep.
I was just going to ask you, I suppose, a couple of things just to reflect on what you've seen in manufacturing would be really interesting. And also, I suppose, looking forward, you know, that there's a lot of this talk about, you know, bringing more onshoring, probably, you know, advanced manufacturing or whatever that might be. Yeah, it'd just be really interesting to hear your thoughts, both on what you've seen and maybe what you see might unfold looking ahead.
So it was very interesting. There's a couple of things at play there. What we find is that if we have a champion within an organization that knows about us, and doesn't want to see these things end up in landfill, then they will seek us out, and that's how we get a lot of our donations. What if I cold call someone, it's a bit harder to get in. And what I notice is that there's a lot more WHS involved in things these days, so it's harder to go rummage through bins. You know, I think that if reverse garbage were to start up as reverse garbage is now, rather than Liz collecting things that, you know, are manufactured, or, you know, clothing or something, though, I don't know if we'd be able to start up again, you know, start now, because of, you know, I'd like to come around and just look in your bins and pick stuff out. Is that okay? And then we're going to sell them for education programs. Not a great elevator pitch. But having that champion within an organization that recognizes the value of the material and then finds us, and that then we're able to establish a relationship. One of the things I've noticed is that the EPA has a program called the Bin Trim Program, and that means that materials, it was one of these programs that was designed, I think, with the right intentions, but sort of backfired for reverse garbage, because it was all about compacting materials and buying new machines to squash your materials and, you know, meet. So we would be finding that things that we used to get, like paper, and it becomes a valuable resource. So people were selling that rather than giving it to us. Now, paper, you can't get any money for it. So anyway, so that's just one of the interesting things I've sort of noticed. We, at the end of lockdown and through the hardness of lockdown, and then the last few years economically, we've had a lot of businesses closing down, and we have been the benefits. We are cheaper than rubbish removal, and invariably some of those things that when businesses are closing down, and it's really unfortunate. So it's not only businesses closing down, but artists and makers leaving Sydney, and they're, you know, some of our biggest customers as well, but they just can't afford the rent in Sydney anymore. So that's been a real shame. The Hollywood writers' strike really affected us as well, because there was no film and television being made in Australia, and film and television, people buy a lot of things for props and costumes from us, and then they give them back. Well, they'll give them back to someone else. So when someone up north started talking about not having any films made outside of America for a while, you know, the last couple of weeks, I was panicked, and I was talking to props buyers as they were coming in, and they were worried, but that may have fallen off so we're affected by a lot of things. And, you know, and on the other side, for a while there, everyone was wanting records, and, you know, and now I can't get rid of records, but I can sell cassettes. So you've just got to watch all those sorts of trends as well, and recognize those. As far as manufacturing for the future, I think I can't really predict that one. I just have to note what's going on and what we have, you know, that are our regular donations, and then just wait for the phone call.
Yeah, fantastic. We were talking just before starting, Kirsten, about, you know, partnering with councils. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and whether there's more opportunities there?
I would love, we do the main thing that we've been doing with councils is workshops for festivals. So out at Casula, we used to have a site out at Casula Powerhouse. I don't know if anyone remembers that, in the 80s. That was awesome. So we do a lot of, you know, festival workshops, so winter workshops, Australia Day workshops, just festivals. And so we go out and provide zero waste craft activities for festival goers. But I am trying to work with them a bit more, especially around resource recovery rather than that more craft side. So in fact, Inner West Council is having circular economy forum in a few weeks. So I'm excited about that and like to think that we've been a bit of pest to power, because that does need to, that language, as I was saying before, that language does need to change. So I'm talking to another couple of councils about locations. So, but I find councils can be a little bit frustrating. I was mentioning this before, that they're very siloed. So the resource recovery won't talk to the sustainability team, and I find that kind of ironic. But you know, but I sympathise. They're doing such a hard job with so little resources.
Yeah, right.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Kirsten. I was going to ask, I don't want to put people on the spot, but I do know, I don't think Stuart's on the call, but Julia, do you want to talk for a minute about, you're on the board, I believe. And yeah, so you've probably got a slightly different perspective. Do you want to just tell everyone maybe, how you got involved and how you see your role there?
Sure, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I am on the board of Reverse Garbage, and I really came across Reverse Garbage because of the face mask project that Kirsten was talking about. Our foundation at the time funded that project, and we sort of thought it was such an amazing and innovative way to kind of come up with a solution to a problem without making more waste. Because I think everyone was very shocked during the pandemic at this sudden sort of huge amount of waste that was being generated with all the COVID tests, masks, all that sort of thing. It was really disturbing. And so I contacted Kirsten after that and have since become a board member. And I just think it's really, I find Reverse Garbage such an interesting organisation. I think, any not-for-profit that can go for 50 years is really amazing. All credit to those teachers, and one of them is still on the board, that have really built this. It's a very iconic organisation, and I think their message is really significant in terms of reuse. We're very fixated on recycling, where there is some talk around waste being a resource, but I think that we need to really start thinking very seriously about that and how we can, reduce what we see as waste to be things that are really useful. And you only have to go into Reverse Garbage to find that. And, even I was able to make, a Christmas decoration, which I was very proud of before Christmas, out of bits and pieces that were there. So I love that there is also a kind of level of playfulness around it and some joy, because I feel like particularly when we think about the climate space, we see a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of really difficult questions that are very hard to kind of come to terms with and to kind of feel like you're making a difference. And I think with organisations like Reverse Garbage, we can start to see that we can make changes that are really tangible and that can make a difference, and that it comes back to that the small changes can change the world. And particularly when we in these times where our institutions are really under threat, how do we do something? Well, this is something that we can support, that is teaching kids about the value of things to make it more than just everything gets thrown away.
I love that. Yeah, I can absolutely see why you got involved. And yeah, if certainly tonight I've started thinking about reuse more, just through hearing you. And yeah, it's amazing we don't do more of it, especially if people are finding their budget doesn't go quite as far as it used to, and feeling that crunch. The obvious place is to start to think, well, how can I do I have to keep buying stuff?
Yep. The slowing down of consumption, well, that's another whole
the topic.
a whole nother topic. But I think, yeah, just to thank you, Julia, that was beautifully said. But it is just thinking about things differently and another thing that I'm starting to talk about more is everything that you touch has been touched somewhere along the lines by human hands. And I think it's not only the planetary resource and that story, it is the human story that goes into the making of these things that is truly important as well. And that, if you start thinking it as a resource as well as people and what goes into making something, you treasure it a lot more. I also think that everyone at high school should be made to make something really complex using their hands, so that they actually get to experience that process. And whether you go on to keep doing it, whatever, but I think if everyone had to make something, you would value things more as well.
Thank you so much. I think there's a very fitting comment in the chat that I think, if you don't mind, if I just read it out, it's around the discussion out. Jill says, a terrific session. I started using reverse garbage 50 years ago as an art and media teacher. And today at Gordon and Blair, we donate and buy items to use in our work. You're doing amazing work, especially with the education programs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the fabulous work that you're doing. And reverse garbage is doing, and you've done so much for the environment and for kids and the people, the communities. And
we're intergenerational now, which is another beautiful thing. So I have grandparents coming with their grandkids saying, "I was a teacher, I used to buy stuff here, and I'm bringing my." So sorry, I'll be quiet now.
That's great.
Thank you so much. We've really thoroughly enjoyed hearing all about reverse garbage tonight.
Yeah, fantastic, Kirsten. Thank you so much. I was really interested to hear about the volunteers as well, the different types of volunteers you have. That's great too. So thank you so much. That was an absolutely fabulous session. So really appreciate that. Now we've got a few minutes left, and what we thought we'd do just to round things off this evening for those that want to sort of stay around is just to have a little chat about the federal election. Obviously, that was all quite momentous, actually, in the last just over a week or so. I don't think anybody quite expected that result. Well, not the scale of it anyway. So I don't know if, I know quite a few of our group were involved in different electorates and things like that. I don't know if anybody wants to sort of make any comments or chat about what they thought about the election, or particularly what it means for climate and the environment going forwards. I sort of heard just now that, what was his name? Murray Watt has been appointed the Environment Minister, replacing instead of Tanya, so that's an interesting move. Anybody, any thoughts from anyone that'd like to jump on about the election? Lisa?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens given the strong mandate that the Labor government has, how hard it will be to move the dial a bit more on climate, because there's a bunch of climate stuff they didn't do last time. And I just wonder now whether there'll be much momentum to try and get some of those policies that they didn't do through.
Do you want to just, it's very interesting. I mean, Lisa, you're in Kooyong. I mean, it was that was called today, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty hard fought, that one. Do you want to just interesting because there was a lot going on in that seat, wasn't there?
There was a huge amount going on. It was the Liberal government, or the Liberal Party, I should say, poured money into Kooyong and into Zoe Daniels' seat, and there was a lot of misinformation and just, I don't know, for people who volunteered on the polling booths and at pre-poll, pretty unpleasant. It could get pretty unpleasant just standing out, handing out how to vote cards. I actually think it pissed a lot of voters off, so feeling like they were walking down this narrow path with people everywhere from handing them stuff. There wasn't a lot of cooperation really between the different parties certainly at the booths for Kooyong. I think there was security in Malvern because it got so bad. So whilst cost of living and stuff was a key topic, climate was still a very important topic in Kooyong. But it was, I think like it was for the rest of the country, that cost of living things seemed to overtake climate as the most important topic.
Mm.
There was, I mean, I was telling you, Stephen and Carolyn, there was, the Brethren was very strong in appearing at booths.
Mm.
And it was sort of bizarre because I didn't realise who they were, but they were often young women, and they all wore sort of short skirts with black tights underneath. And I thought for a while that was the Liberal Party's dress code for young women. The men just wore normal stuff, but the women seemed to wear short skirts. And then it was the Brethren, and at one of the polling booths, they were singing. So it was pretty weird, and I don't think the Electoral Office really got on top of managing what was going on outside the polling booth, and I think they need to. I think there needs to be some guidelines around how many people, how many signs.
Yeah.
I know Burundara was racing around because in Victoria you cannot attach a candidate sign or any political material on public land. So I notice in Sydney you can put them on light poles and benches and all that sort of stuff. You can't do that in Victoria. So the Burundara Council would be going around trying to take these things down from sporting fences, and they were pretty angry with what was going on because they weren't resourced up for it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think there needs to be some work by the Electoral Office in setting some standards. There was an attempt in Kooyong to agree between the parties how many volunteers and how many signs would be put up, you know, those little triangular signs.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party refused to participate.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Thanks, Lisa. That's great. I thought it was also interesting that, you know, in a lot of the marginal seats, and Matt, you're in Gilmore there. I think that was one of the most marginal seats in the country, and I think it swung to Labor, didn't it? More.
Oh, hugely. Yeah, it was the most marginal and swung to Labor pretty emphatically. But similar to what Lisa was talking about, the saturation by the Libs was a bit out of control, and they seemed to turn quite a few people off. They were so in your face at pre-poll. Was handing up for the local independent. And the battles on cornflakes were just hysterical. It's like pre-poll in Nara, everything came down on the Saturday because church on Sunday was being held at the Wesley Mission. By Monday morning, every single spare bit of real estate on the fence was taken up by the Liberals. There was not a single room left for a cornflake from anybody else.
Yeah.
So, of course, thinking laterally, everyone bought some tomato stakes and started putting their cornflakes up on poles. So the next time round, the Libs went up on poles and Labor's up on poles, and then and you'd watch voters arrive and just look aghast at this, you know, church lawn that's been overtaken by cornflakes on steroids. It was amusing, actually. It really was.
Sort of becomes white noise, doesn't it? It's just this massive stuff walking through it.
So yes, bring on those regulations, Lisa. Good idea.
Yeah.
What do people think? Well, obviously the Greens have got the balance of power in the Senate with some independents like David Pocock. What do you think the role, or what should the independents' role? What should we be hoping, or encouraging the independents to achieve, I suppose, or to aim for in this term, given that they don't, you know, Labor's got such a sort of majority. Has anyone sort of thought about, you know, what the independents could achieve or could be encouraged to try to achieve?
I think what's interesting is that it looks like all other parties, so Greens and Independents, got more votes, more first preference votes than the Liberals this election, first time ever. So Labor got the most. Everybody else got the next, and Liberals got third if you were making a three-way contest. So I think there's a role to be somewhat to be the opposition, you know, and try And in holding Labor to account, I think it's to try and make them more ambitious and bolder.
Yeah.
And if Labor's listening, they should realise that, the move for people to vote independent and to vote smaller party is actually, where they need to be going in their policy platform if they want to maintain office. So I think there's a lesson both to prod Labor in the right direction, but also to hold them to account to do more.
Yeah. That's a good point. And then I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens to the Liberal. I mean, they're obviously electing their leader tomorrow, and it's hard to. It's going to be very interesting to see where that all goes as well.
And Kaz, the only other thing to pick up is that unfortunately Pocock's lost his balance of power in the Senate too. They're going to need either the Greens or the coalition to get anything through. Because even if they get all the independents in the Senate, it's still not enough if Greens and the Liberals stand in opposition. So I think we were all hoping, for those of us that are keen on the independent side, we were hoping for a bit more hung, don't like the word, but proportional representation in the Parliament. And the same, unfortunately, it just hasn't panned out that way this time.
I'm hoping with the independents that they will continue to be respectful and get people to behave better, which I think they were really setting out to do with respect and listening and intelligent instead of all that stupid nonsense they go on with. If they could bring that in, I think it would make a big difference and people might take more interest in what they're talking about.
Yeah, that integrity in politics,
Exactly.
sharing the diaries, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I think would help engage people more in politics. What's my member doing?
yes.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to think about and to sort of just work out how it's so different to last Parliament where they really did pretty much have the balance or close to, because the last thing we want is to listen to the Liberal Party sniping at them. I mean, that as I think you said, that they're not really the opposition anymore, and they shouldn't have half the voice base in there. So
it's sort of interesting though. It's sort of like when you look at that legislation that Labor put through, changing the funding model. It's like in certain aspects they see themselves as allies.
Yeah.
It's better to side with, if you're Labor, with Liberal or the coalition than let those other parties in the door. And it's sort of interesting to me that that's happened. So I wonder now whether with the loss of seats that certainly the Liberal Party's had, whether that will start to change the behaviour. And that, so I have a simplistic view, when you look at the Liberal and the Labor government parties, that they sit either side of the centre. And then Liberal chooses to align further to the right with the Nationals. And everyone just sort of accepts that that's their that's how they get themselves into power. But whenever there's this suggestion by Liberal that Labor's going to side closer with the Greens, Labor's very quick to say, no, we're never going to do the Greens. And yet, really, the Greens are the sort of left version of the National Party. So I'm sort of curious to see whether there's any evolution in the thinking and the strategizing by the major parties on how do we engage with some of these people. And
maybe the change in the Greens will play into that as well if they are a little bit less militant.
Yeah.
And maybe focused a bit more on the environment. That might be helpful.
I think to me, the other thing that's hopeful for the environment is the last couple of elections, it's sort of that regional Queensland vote's been really key. You know, the belief was that's where elections are won and lost. And of course, that's the National Party and a lot of anti-environment stuff. I think this election's proven that that's not where it's been won and lost. It's now a far more across the board set of circumstances, and I think that's got to help, if nothing else, to just de-emphasise that political regional vote in Queensland.
Yeah, and the fact there's so many marginal seats across the country that they can't just take for granted.
And that sort of localization of results, right? You know, there were so many surprises in what the counting did. It's really interesting. So in Kooyong, in the old part of Kooyong, the independent got the majority primary vote. They got 57% of primary vote. So it's, you know, if you get enough of these strong, I mean, Zali would have a pretty high percentage, I would imagine, of primary vote.
She does.
So this sort of means that as there's more small parties, assuming small parties can get back in, and I agree with you, Matt, it sort of has to start having some, I'd like to think it's going to have some sort of impact.
And also, I suppose, you know, with a lot of the, well, Zali's on a third term, you know, all the other independents, this is now their second term. They know you know, how things get done and all the rest of it. So I think you might see them a bit more visible. You know, they get invited onto shows. They're a bit more visible in the media, stuff like that. Wouldn't surprise me. It's interesting. We've had quite a few environment groups sort of get in touch with us and just give us updates. They're all pretty positive, I think, about the opportunities looking forward. Very good. Any final comments on the election?
I was really pleased to see the environment groups putting out their little how to vote scorecards. I'm assuming that happened across the country. It was really nice seeing that being handed out in amongst the party aligned stuff.
Yeah, agreed. I saw one from Carha. I don't know if some of you might remember, we had the Climate and Health Alliance. We had Michelle Ills on at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, and Carha put a guide for voting out, which was great, and a number of the other orgs, as you mentioned, Lisa. And I saw one for the first time, a guide to voting in the Senate if you're climate aligned, and I just thought that was such a great idea that I hadn't seen and can be quite confusing. So hopefully lots of people pick that up next time. Yeah.
I don't know if you've found this, Lisa, but I noticed in the booth I was working on election day, the number of young people who had thought about it in advance. They knew what they were doing. You know, they just came in and didn't want the how to votes or anything. They just, you know, they thought it all through.
I often said, I've got it on my phone.
Exactly.
We had actually a lovely guy at early voting. He'd come down from school. He had his school uniform on, and it was his first time to vote. And he was so he would have been year 12. He was so excited. He rocked up to the Liberal guys and said, right, so why should I vote for you? And then he turned around to the independent, and he sort of worked his way down. And after he'd voted, he came back, handed back his piece of paper. He said, oh, it was fantastic. Thanks for your giving me the information. And who knows what he voted, but it was so nice to see somebody really enthusiastic about voting.
That's fantastic.
And how great that he went and sort of spoke to everyone. Very impressive young person. Thank you, everyone. We probably could keep talking all night, but it's getting late. Really hope you've enjoyed tonight's session, and thanks again to Kirsten, and wishing you the very best of luck with Reverse Garbage. It's an amazing, terrific organisation. Next month, Our meeting's on Monday, the 16th of June, and we have Abby Thomas speaking. She's actually a member of our group, and some of you might know her. She's head of sustainability at SBS and has been committed to better action on climate for a long time. And she's going to talk about her recent trip to Costa Rica. She's been there, she went for 3 months and did a sort of study tour, and she's actually written a book, a self-published book, which we'll share as well. And she's going to talk about Costa Rica, a decarbonisation lab for the world. So that will be very interesting, and we hope you can join us, and look forward to seeing as many of you as can come in a month's time, if not before. So have a great week, and thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Bye.
Bye.